He wasn't wearing a tailored Italian suit. He didn't have a Patek Philippe on his wrist. He was just a quiet black man in a comfortable hoodie, sitting in the corner seat of the most exclusive VIP lounge at LAX to Tiffany Street. Claire, a lifestyle influencer with 2 million followers and a god complex, he was a glitch in her aesthetic, an intruder who didn't belong. She thought she could snap her manicured fingers, weaponize her audience, and have him thrown out like yesterday's trash. She didn't realize that while she was busy chasing likes, he had just finished buying the building. This is the story of how one woman's viral entitlement met the silent, crushing weight of absolute power. The air inside the Centurion Sapphire Lounge at Los Angeles International Airport smelled of white tea, expensive leather, and the subtle, metallic tang of anxiety that only the very rich emit. It was a sanctuary for the elite, a glass-walled fortress suspended above the chaos of the public terminals. Here, silence was the currency. Silas Sterling adjusted the hood of his charcoal cashmere sweater, pulling it slightly forward to shield his eyes from the harsh California sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He was exhausted. The last 72 hours had been a blur of boardrooms in Tokyo, Singapore, and finally, Los Angeles. He wasn't a man who enjoyed the spotlight. At 42, Silas had built his fortune in logistics and high-frequency infrastructure. He moved goods, he moved data, and recently, he had started moving people. His latest acquisition, finalized only 3 hours ago via a secure digital signature, was the Eros Group, the private holding company that managed operations for 3 major terminals at LAX, including the very lounge he was sitting in. Technically, he owned the chair he was sitting on. Technically, he owned the coffee machine buzzing in the corner. But nobody knew that yet. To the staff, he was just a priority pass holder, whose credentials had cleared with a high-level clearance code that the front desk scanner simply read as VIP Do Not Disturb. He chose the corner seat, seat 4A, for a specific reason. It was secluded, backed by a sound-dampening moss wall, and offered a direct view of the tarmac where his private jet, a Gulfstream G700, was currently undergoing a mandatory mechanical check. It would be another 2 hours before he could board. Silas opened a worn paperback copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He didn't use a Kindle. He liked the smell of paper. He took a sip of sparkling water, exhaled a long, ragged breath, and prepared to disappear into the text. Peace, however, is a fragile thing in the age of social media. The double doors of the lounge burst open with a force that made the receptionist jump. A high-pitched, manicured voice sliced through the hushed atmosphere. "No, Chloe, listen to me." The lighting in the main hall was garbage. "I look orange. I cannot post that. We need to redo the intro in here. This is the Sapphire Lounge. The lighting is supposed to be divine." Entered Tiffany Street, Claire. Tiffany was less of a person and more of a brand activation walking on 2 legs. She was blonde, though the shade was chemically engineered to a brightness that didn't exist in nature. She wore a beige athleisure set that likely cost more than a mid-sized sedan, and her face was painted in the heavy, contour-heavy style that looked fantastic on an iPhone screen but jarring in real life. Trailing behind her was Chloe, a frantic assistant burdened with a ring light, a tripod, 2 carry-on bags, and a venti Starbucks cup that looked dangerously close to spilling. Tiffany stopped in the middle of the lounge, scanning the room like a predator looking for a wounded gazelle. She ignored the annoyed glances from a pair of tech CEOs discussing a merger in the corner. She ignored the exhausted mother, trying to rock a baby to sleep. "Okay," Tiffany whispered, though her whisper was a stage whisper. "The light is hitting perfectly over there." She pointed a long, acrylic-nailed finger toward the corner. "Toward seat 4A. Toward Silas." "Perfect," Tiffany declared, snapping her fingers at Chloe. "Set up the ring light over there. I want the runway in the background. It screams jet setter. It screams global citizen." Tiff," Chloe stammered, shifting the weight of the tripod. "There's someone sitting there." Tiffany lowered her oversized sunglasses, peering over the rim. She saw Silas, she saw the hoodie, she saw the worn paperback book, she saw the dark skin. She didn't see a billionaire. She didn't see a VIP. She saw an obstacle. And worse, in her mind, she saw someone who didn't fit the aesthetic. "Ugh," Tiffany groaned, rolling her eyes so hard it looked painful. "Why do they always let just anyone in here nowadays? It's supposed to be exclusive." Go tell him to move. Me? Chloe squeaked. Yes, you. That's why I pay you. Tell him I need the spot for a shoot. Tell him it's for… I don't know. Tell him it's for Vogue or something. People love that. Chloe hesitated. She looked at Silas, who hadn't moved a muscle, though his eyes had stopped scanning the page. He was listening. I don't think he's going to move, Tiff. He looks settled. Tiffany huffed, grabbing her phone and checking her reflection. Fine. If you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. Watch this. I'm going to kill him with kindness, or whatever. She strutted across the room, her heels clicking aggressively on the polished marble floor. She stopped 3 feet from Silas, cleared her throat, and put on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Excuse me? Hi, sorry to bother you. Silas didn't look up immediately. He finished the paragraph, marked his spot with a finger, and slowly raised his head. His eyes were dark, calm, and unimpressed. Yes? Hi, Tiffany repeated, louder this time, assuming he might be slow. I'm Tiffany Street Claire? You might know me from Instagram? Tiff Travels? Silas blinked. No. The rejection hit her like a physical slap. She blinked back, her smile twitching. Oh, well, that's funny. Anyway, look, I'm doing a live stream for my fans. I have about 2 million of them, and the lighting right here in this corner is specifically what I need for my brand partnership. So, I'm going to need you to swap seats with me. She pointed to a seat near the bathroom. There's a perfectly good chair over there. Silas looked at the bathroom seat. Then he looked back at the view of the runway. Then he looked at Tiffany. No, thank you, Silas said calmly. He went back to his book. The air in the lounge seemed to drop 10 degrees. Tiffany stood frozen, her brain unable to process the word no. She wasn't used to it. Men usually scrambled to help her. Staff usually bent over backward to avoid a negative review. Excuse me? Her voice lost the sugary coating. I don't think you understand. I'm working. This is my job. I need this spot. Silas turned a page. And I am resting. This is my seat. I was here first. Tiffany let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. She turned to Chloe, who was cowering behind the tripod. Is he serious? Is this happening? She turned back to Silas, her voice rising. Look, buddy, I don't know how you got in here. Maybe you used a miles coupon or something, but this lounge is for serious travelers. I have platinum status with the airline. Do you know what that means? Silas sighed. It was a deep, weary sound. He closed his book, keeping his finger on the page. Miss, Silas said, his voice low and steady, I do not care about your status. I do not care about your Instagram. I am tired. I am sitting here. Please leave me alone. Tiffany's face flushed a deep, angry red. The embarrassment was prickling at her skin. People were watching. The tech CEOs had stopped talking. The mother with the baby was staring. Tiffany couldn't back down now. If she backed down, she lost. Okay, she said, her voice trembling with rage. Okay. You want to play it like that? Fine. She pulled out her phone. She swiped to Instagram. She hit the live. Let's see how you like being famous. The little red live indicator flashed on Tiffany's screen. Within seconds, the viewer count ticked up. 500, 1,000, 200, 3,000. Her Tiff army was logging on. She held the phone up, angling it so her face was in the foreground, tragically lit, with Silas visible in the background over her shoulder. She put on her victim face, pouty lips, furrowed brow, eyes wide with manufactured distress. Hey guys, she whispered into the microphone, her voice trembling theatrically. I didn't want to do this. You know I'm all about positivity and good vibes. But I'm honestly shaking right now. I'm at the Sapphire Lounge at LAX, just trying to do my job, trying to create content for you guys, and I'm being harassed. She paused for effect, reading the comments flooding in. OMG, Tiff, what happened? Is that the guy behind you? He looks scary. Security. I politely asked this man if we could share the space because the lighting is crucial for the promo. Tiffany lied effortlessly. And he went off on me. He was so aggressive. He told me I didn't belong here. He made some really nasty comments about influencers. I honestly don't feel safe right now. Silas, realizing he was being filmed, stiffened. He valued his privacy above almost anything else. He turned his head away from the camera, pulling his hood further down. Look at him, Tiffany narrated, panning the camera closer to Silas. Now he's hiding. Guilty conscience much? He's refusing to move. He's basically holding this spot hostage. And honestly, it's giving squatter vibes. Like, does he even have a ticket, or did he just sneak in? The comment section exploded with toxicity. Kick him out, entitled jerk. Get the manager, Tiff. Don't let him bully you. Silas turned fully toward her then. He didn't shout. He didn't stand up. He just looked directly into the camera lens, with a gaze so intense it seemed to crack the screen. Put the phone away, Silas said. It wasn't a request. It was an order. See? Tiffany shrieked, jumping back as if he had lunged at her. Did you guys hear that? He's threatening me. Oh my God, I'm shaking. She turned to Chloe. Go get the manager. Now. Tell them I'm being threatened by a passenger. Chloe dropped the tripod and ran toward the front desk. Tiffany kept the camera rolling. I'm not moving, guys. I'm standing my ground. We can't let men like this think they own the world just because they're intimidating. I pay my membership fees. I deserve to be safe. Silas reached into his pocket. Tiffany gasped, flinching. He's reaching for something. Oh my God. Silas pulled out his own phone. He wasn't calling security. He unlocked the screen and dialed a number from his contacts. It was a direct line, bypassing all switchboards. Arthur, Silas said quietly into the phone, ignoring Tiffany's commentary. On the other end of the line was Arthur Pendleton, the CEO of the airport's regional operations. A man who was currently sitting in a high-rise office in downtown Los Angeles, staring at a spreadsheet. Silas? Arthur's voice was surprised. I thought you were in the air. Is everything all right with the transition? I'm in the Sapphire Lounge, Silas said, his voice devoid of emotion. There is a situation. A situation? Is it the staff? The facility? There is a passenger, Silas said, glancing at Tiffany, who was now narrating his phone call to her audience. He's probably calling his dealer or something, guys, look at him. She is live streaming me. She is harassing me. She is demanding I leave my seat. Good Lord, Arthur sighed. Do you want me to call security? Have her removed? No, Silas said. Not yet. I want to see how your staff handles this. Consider it a stress test for the new management protocols. Silas, are you sure? If she's streaming, I'm sure. But Arthur? Yes? Get down here. I want you to witness this. I'm 20 minutes away. I'm leaving now. Silas hung up. He set the phone down on the table, face down. At that moment, the lounge doors swung open again. Chloe returned, trailing behind a man in a sharp blue blazer. It was Graham, the lounge manager. Graham was 28, ambitious, and terrified of conflict. He had been manager for exactly 2 weeks. He saw the phone, he saw the ring light, he saw the crying blonde woman, and he saw the silent black man in the hoodie. His bias kicked in before his brain did. Miss Street Claire? Graham asked, hurrying over, his face a mask of professional concern. I'm Graham, the lounge manager. Your assistant said you were being threatened? Yes, Tiffany wailed, pointing a trembling finger at Silas. Him. He's been verbally abusive. He threatened to hit me. And he refuses to move from the reserved seating area. There was no reserved seating area. Seat 4A was first come, first serve. But Graham didn't want to argue with a woman who had gold elite tags on her bag and a phone broadcasting to thousands. Graham turned to Silas. He puffed out his chest, trying to look authoritative. Sir, Graham said, his voice tight, I'm going to have to ask you to put your book away and come with me to the front desk. Silas looked at Graham. He saw the fear in the young man's eyes, but he also saw the arrogance. Why? Silas asked. We have received complaints about your behavior. And we need to verify your eligibility to be in this lounge. I scanned my pass at the entrance, Silas said. Yes, well, machines make mistakes, Graham said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Look, sir, let's not make a scene. This lady is a very important guest. Just grab your things and we can sort this out outside. Maybe I can get you a voucher for the food court. The food court. Silas almost smiled. It was so absurd it was funny. I am not going to the food court, Silas said. And I am not leaving this seat. Tiffany chimed in from behind Graham, aiming the camera at Silas's face. See? He's resisting. He's refusing to comply. This is what I'm talking about, guys. Zero respect for authority. Graham was sweating now. He knew he was on camera. He needed to look strong. "Sir," Graham said, louder this time, "if you do not leave voluntarily, I will be forced to call airport police. You are disturbing the peace. You are trespassing." "Trespassing," Silas repeated the word, tasting the irony. "Yes. Now move." Silas looked at the camera. He looked at Tiffany, smug and victorious. He looked at Graham, nervous and incompetent. "Call the police," Silas said softly. "Call everyone. I'll wait." The silence that followed Silas's challenge, "Call everyone, I'll wait," was heavy, thick, and suffocating. It was the kind of silence that precedes a thunderclap. For the next 10 minutes, the Centurion Sapphire Lounge became a theater of the absurd. Tiffany Street. Claire, emboldened by the arrival of her digital cavalry, had turned the corner of the lounge into a makeshift studio. She had propped her phone against a vase of orchids, ensuring the angle captured Silas's threatening posture, sitting still, reading a book while she paced back and forth, wiping away imaginary tears. I don't understand why people have to be so hateful." She sniffled into the camera, her voice cracking perfectly on cue. The viewer count had climbed to 12,000. "I'm just a girl trying to build a business. And this man, this stranger, is looking at me like he wants to hurt me. It's terrifying, you guys. Please, tag Delta, tag the airport, tag everyone. We need to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." The comments were a blur of rage. "Get him out of there. Where is security? Stay safe, Tiff. This is why I don't travel anymore. Too many creeps." Silas ignored it all. He had returned to Marcus Aurelius. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. He repeated the line in his head, a mantra to keep his heart rate steady. He could feel the eyes of the other passengers on him. The tech CEOs were now filming discreetly with their phones. The mother with the baby had moved to the far side of the room, looking at him with undisguised suspicion. Graham, the manager, was pacing near the entrance, whispering frantically into his walkie-talkie. He looked pale. He knew that calling the police into a VIP lounge was a nuclear option. It disrupted the atmosphere. It upset the wealthy, but he had backed himself into a corner. If he let Silas stay, he looked weak in front of Tiffany and her millions of followers. If he kicked Silas out, he restored order. To Graham, the math was simple. The crying white woman in the designer tracksuit was the victim. The silent black man in the hoodie was the aggressor. It was a bias he didn't even know he had, programmed into him by years of subtle societal conditioning. Then, the static crackle of radios announced the arrival of the law. 2 officers strode into the lounge. Officer Miller was a burly man with a buzz cut and a face that looked like it had been chiseled out of granite. Officer Kowalski was younger, leaner, with a hand already resting near his belt. They didn't look like customer service agents. They looked like bouncers, ready to clear a bar fight. "Who called it in?" Miller's voice boomed, shattering the quiet luxury of the lounge. Graham practically ran to them. "Officers, thank God, I'm the manager. We have a situation with a non-compliant passenger refusing to vacate a reserved area." Tiffany saw the uniforms and immediately ramped up her performance. She grabbed her phone, switched the camera to front-facing, and ran toward them. "Officers, oh my God, please help me." She threw herself into the narrative, her voice pitching up an octave. "That man over there, he threatened me. He said he was going to make me pay. I'm scared for my life." Miller's eyes narrowed. He looked at Tiffany Blonde, crying, holding a phone. Then he looked at the corner. He saw Silas. Silas hadn't moved. He hadn't stood up. He hadn't acknowledged their presence. Miller walked over, his boots heavy on the floor. Kowalski flanked him, cutting off any escape route. The other passengers held their breath. "Sir," Miller barked, "put the book down." Silas finished the sentence he was reading. He placed the bookmark carefully. He closed the cover. He looked up. "Can I help you, officer?" Silas asked. His voice was calm, almost bored. "Stand up," Miller ordered. "We need to see some ID and a boarding pass." "Now, I am comfortable sitting," Silas said. "And I have already shown my credentials to the front desk upon entry." "I don't care what you did at the front desk," Miller snapped, stepping closer. He invaded Silas's personal space, looming over him. "You're causing a disturbance. The manager wants you gone. The lady says you threatened her." That gives me probable cause to remove you by force if you don't comply. I did not threaten her, Silas said, his eyes locking onto Miller's. I told her no. It seems she is unfamiliar with the word. Don't get smart with me, pal, Miller warned, his hand twitching toward his cuffs. This is private property. If the manager says you go, you go. If you refuse, it's criminal trespassing. Is it? Silas asked. I was under the impression that a ticket purchases a right to be here, provided one follows the rules. I have broken no rules. I am sitting, I am reading, I am drinking water. You're disturbing the peace, Tiffany shouted from behind the police, her phone aimed like a weapon. Look at him, he's so arrogant. He thinks he's above the law. Graham chimed in, emboldened by the police presence. He's right, officer. He's making the other guests uncomfortable. He doesn't fit the profile of our members. Doesn't fit the profile. The words hung in the air. Silas looked at Graham. And what profile is that, Graham? Be specific, Graham stammered. The platinum profile. You know, professional, courteous. Enough, Miller interrupted. He had lost patience. He wasn't interested in a debate. He was interested in clearing the call and getting back to his patrol car. Sir, I'm going to ask you one last time. Stand up, turn around, and put your hands behind your back. You are under arrest for trespassing and disorderly conduct. Silas looked at the Rolex on Miller's wrist. It was 2:14 p.m. Arthur is late, Silas murmured to himself. Who? Miller asked. My lawyer. Silas lied smoothly. Or rather, an associate. I don't care if you're waiting for the Pope, Miller said. He reached out and grabbed Silas's arm. You're coming with us. The moment Miller's hand touched the cashmere of Silas's sweater, the dynamic shifted. Silas didn't pull away. He didn't fight. He simply went rigid. I would advise you not to do that, officer, Silas said, his voice dropping to a register that vibrated in the floorboards. You are making a mistake that will cost you your pension. Resisting arrest, Miller shouted. Kowalski, grab him. The two officers hauled Silas out of the chair. The book fell to the floor. The sound of it hitting the marble was the only noise in the room, besides the clicking of Tiffany's phone shutter. Got him, Tiffany squealed to her live stream. They're taking him down. Justice served, guys. This is what happens when you mess with Tiff's Claire. Silas stood between the two officers, his arms twisted behind his back. He wasn't struggling, but he held his head high. He looked directly into Tiffany's camera lens. Remember this moment, Silas said to the lens, because you are recording your own eulogy. The Sapphire Lounge was no longer a sanctuary. It was a spectacle. As Miller and Kowalski marched Silas toward the exit, the other passengers weren't just watching, they were live streaming too. The tech CEOs, the tired mother, the waiters, everyone had a phone out. The incident was hitting Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram simultaneously from 12 different angles. Airport drama, Karen, police brutality, who is he? On Tiffany's stream, the comments were shifting. While her diehard fans were cheering, the algorithm had pushed the video to a wider audience. People with eyes and brains were starting to tune in. User 7734. Wait, did he actually do anything? He was just sitting there. Lawyer up. That cop didn't even read him his rights. This looks like a lawsuit. Crypto King. Yo, hold up. That hoodie looks like the new Loro Piana collection. That's a $4,000 hoodie. Who is this guy? Silas was 10 feet from the double doors. The handcuffs were tight against his wrists, pinching the skin. He felt the humiliation burning in his chest, but he wrestled it down, suffocating it with logic. This is data, he told himself. This is a stress test. I am gathering evidence. Graham was holding the door open, looking smugly satisfied. Thank you, officers. We really appreciate you keeping the standards high. Just doing our job, Miller grunted, shoving Silas forward. Suddenly, the elevator doors directly across the hall from the lounge pinged open. They didn't just open, they seemed to explode outward. 3 men in dark suits burst into the hallway, flanking a 4th man who looked like he was on the verge of a cardiac event. It was Arthur Pendleton. Arthur was 60 years old, the regional director of airport operations for the entire West Coast. He was the man who signed the paychecks for the airport police. He was the man who hired and fired the lounge management companies. He was a man who, until 10 minutes ago, thought he had a secure job. He stopped dead in the hallway, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. He saw the lounge doors open. He saw Graham smiling, he saw the two police officers, and he saw Silas Sterling, the man who had just purchased the parent company of the airport's operational group, in handcuffs. Arthur's face went from flushed to ghostly white in a single heartbeat. "Stop!" Arthur screamed. It wasn't a professional shout, it was a primal screech of terror. Officer Miller paused, confused. He recognized Arthur. Everyone knew the director. "Director Pendleton?" "Sir, we just handled a situation in the W." "Unhand him!" Arthur roared, sprinting the last 20 feet. He moved with a speed that defied his age and his BMI. "Get your hands off him immediately." Miller blinked. "Sir, this subject was trespassing. He was aggressive toward the staff and—" The subject? Arthur looked like he was about to vomit. He reached Silas and practically shoved Officer Kowalski away. "Do you have any idea who this is? Do you have any godforsaken idea what you have done?" Graham stepped out of the lounge, his smile faltering. "Mr. Pendleton? It's okay. We have it under control." This man was refusing to leave a reserved seat and harassing Miss Street Claire. Arthur turned on Graham. The look in Arthur's eyes was murderous. "Graham," Arthur said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "You are a fool. You are a colossal, monumental fool." Arthur turned back to Silas. His hands were shaking as he reached out, hovering near the handcuffs but afraid to touch them. "Mr. Sterling," Arthur choked out. "Mr. Sterling, I cannot find the words. I am mortified. Please, tell me they didn't hurt you." The hallway went silent. Tiffany, who had followed them out to film the perp walk, lowered her phone slightly. The name Sterling echoed in the quiet. Silas looked at Arthur. Then he looked at Miller. "I am currently under arrest, Arthur," Silas said calmly. "Officer Miller here says I am trespassing." "Trespassing?" Arthur let out a hysterical laugh. He spun around to face the police officers. "You arrested him for trespassing? He owns the building." The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't just the lounge. It was the terminals, the tarmac, the very air conditioning ducts. The silence seemed to stretch out and cover the entire airport. Miller's grip on Silas's arm went slack. "What?" "He owns the airport operations," Arthur shouted, gesturing wildly. "He bought the Arrows Group this morning. He owns the lease on this terminal. He owns the security contract. He signs your checks, you moron." Miller looked at Silas. The hoodie, the calm demeanor, the arrogance that was actually the quiet confidence of a man who could buy and sell everyone in the room. Silas finally moved. He shrugged his shoulders, shaking off Miller's loosened grip. He turned his back to the police and looked at Arthur. "Get these things off me," Silas said softly. "Yes. Yes, of course. Where is the key?" "Give me the key," Arthur snapped at Miller. Miller, fumbling, hands shaking, pulled out a small silver key. He unlocked the cuffs. The metal clicked, and Silas rubbed his wrists. Tiffany Street Claire stood frozen near the door. Her mouth was slightly open. Her live stream was still running. The comments were flying so fast they were unreadable. "Oh my God. He owns the airport? Rip Tiffany, this is the biggest fail in history. I'm recording this." Silas adjusted his sleeves. He didn't rub his wrists to soothe the pain. He did it to smooth out the cashmere. He looked at Arthur. "Arthur." "Yes, Mr. Sterling?" Arthur was sweating profusely. "I asked for a stress test of the new management protocols," Silas said, his voice echoing in the corridor. "I believe we have found some significant flaws. We will fix it," Arthur promised. "We will fix it right now." "Good," Silas said. He turned slowly, pivoting on his heel until he was facing the lounge entrance. He looked at Graham, who was currently leaning against the doorframe for support, looking like he might faint. Then his gaze moved past Graham to Tiffany. She was holding her phone, but her arm was lowering. The color had drained from her face, leaving only the orange bronzer, which now looked like war paint on a corpse. Silas walked back toward the lounge. He didn't walk like a prisoner anymore. He walked like a landlord inspecting a damaged property. "I'm going back to my seat," Silas said. "I haven't finished my chapter." He walked past Graham without looking at him. He walked past Tiffany. As he passed her, he stopped. He didn't look at her phone. He looked her in the eye. "You wanted content," Silas said. "I hope you got it." He walked back into the lounge, back to seat 4A. The entire room, the tech CEOs, the waiters, the mother, watched him in awe. He sat down. He picked up his book. He took a sip of his water. But outside the lounge, the karma was just beginning to spool up. "Arthur!" Silas called out from his seat, not raising his voice, knowing Arthur would hear him. Arthur rushed into the lounge. "Yes, sir?" Silas turned a page of meditations. "I want everyone in this room who is not a passenger out. Immediately. That includes the police, that includes the manager, and that includes the woman with the ring light." Arthur nodded. He turned to Officer Miller, his face hard. "You heard him. Get out. We will discuss your suspension in my office in 1 hour." Then Arthur turned to Graham. "Give me your badge. You're done." And finally, Arthur turned to Tiffany. "Miss," Arthur said, his voice cold, "the lounge is for VIPs only. The owner has revoked your access. Please leave before we have you arrested for, what was it? Trespassing." Tiffany looked at her phone. The screen was flooded with clown emojis. She looked at Silas. He was reading. She realized, with a sinking horror, that the video wasn't just viral, it was evidence. And Silas Sterling was not a man who sued for money. He was a man who sued for sport. The walk from the Centurion Sapphire Lounge to the public terminal curbside was less than half a mile, but for Tiffany Street Claire, it felt like the Baton Death March. She wasn't just being asked to leave, she was being escorted. Arthur Pendleton, a man whose face was still a mask of sheer terror at having almost arrested his own boss, had summoned 2 new security guards, ones who hadn't just threatened a billionaire. These guards were stone-faced, professional, and completely immune to Tiffany's tears. "Please," Tiffany begged, her voice hitching as she tried to keep pace with them. Her heels, which had clicked with such arrogance 20 minutes ago, now scraped awkwardly against the linoleum. "You can't do this. I have a flight to Milan. I have a seat in business class. I'm a gold medallion member." Arthur didn't even look at her. He was walking 5 paces ahead, barking orders into his phone. "Yes, scrub the footage from the lounge cameras. No, wait, keep it. Archive it. Mr. Sterling might want it for the legal team. And get legal on the line. Now." Tiffany turned to Chloe, her assistant. Chloe was trailing behind, struggling with the tripod and the ring light, her face pale. "Chloe, do something," Tiffany hissed. "Call the airline. Tell them I'm being harassed." Chloe stopped. She looked at Tiffany. She looked at the security guards. Then she looked down at her phone, where the live stream comments were still scrolling at light speed. "Chloe, run. Girl, quit. Tiff is done." Chloe set the tripod down. "No," Chloe said. Tiffany blinked, her mascara running in jagged streaks down her cheeks. "Excuse me? I'm not calling the airline, Tiff," Chloe said, her voice shaking but gaining strength. "I'm not doing this anymore. You just tried to get an innocent man arrested because you didn't like his hoodie. And he owns the airport. Do you know how insane that is? You work for me," Tiffany shrieked, stamping her foot. "I made you. You pay me minimum wage to carry your bags and lie to people," Chloe corrected. "I quit." Chloe dropped the ring light. It clattered loudly on the hard floor, a piece of plastic snapping off. She turned and walked away toward the exit, disappearing into the crowd of regular travelers. Tiffany stood there, mouth agape. The security guards didn't wait. One of them gently but firmly took her elbow. "Ma'am, you need to keep moving. Mr. Pendleton has ordered you removed from the premises immediately." "But my flight," Tiffany wailed. "My bags are on the plane." Arthur stopped and turned around. He looked at her with a mixture of pity and disgust. "Miss Street Claire," Arthur said, his voice echoing in the busy terminal. "You have been placed on the internal no-fly list for this airport alliance, effective 2 minutes ago. Your bags are being offloaded as we speak. You will receive a refund for your ticket in 7 to 10 business days, minus a processing fee for the security disruption." "No-fly list?" Tiffany gasped. "For how long?" Arthur checked his watch. "Indefinitely. Mr. Sterling takes the comfort of his passengers very seriously. And you, Miss Street Claire, are a liability." The realization hit her like a physical blow. Milan was gone. The Fashion Week content was gone. The brand deal was gone. She was led outside to the curb, right next to the smoking area. The automatic doors slid shut behind her. She was standing in the exhaust fumes of a shuttle bus, clutching her Prada bag, with no assistant, no flight, and no dignity. Her phone buzzed. It was a notification from Instagram, @Silas Sterling. Official has requested to follow you. Her heart stopped. She clicked the notification. The account had 0 posts, 0 following, and had been created 5 minutes ago. But it had a blue check mark. A direct message appeared. Enjoy the traffic. S. The karma didn't hit all at once. It trickled in, then it flooded. Tiffany spent the Uber ride home, an Uber X, because her corporate card was suddenly declined for suspicious activity, frantically deleting the live stream. But the internet is forever. Screen recordings were already viral on Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok. The hashtags had mutated. Tiff Travels was trending, but not in the way she wanted. It was now Tiff Travels to Jail and Karen of the Sky. She got back to her apartment, a sterile, white-walled loft in West Hollywood that she leased specifically for filming, and collapsed onto her beige sofa. She needed damage control. She needed a spin. Okay, she muttered to herself, her hands shaking as she typed out a Notes app apology. I want to apologize for the misunderstanding today. I was under extreme stress and felt unsafe. She posted it. 10 minutes later, her phone began to ring. It wasn't her fans. It was her agency. Tiffany? It was Brad, her agent at Influence Global. Brad usually sounded like he had just chugged 3 espressos and loved everything she did. Today, he sounded like he was at a funeral. Brad, Tiffany cried. Thank God. Listen, it's a disaster. I need you to contact the airport. We need to sue them for distress. And get Instagram to take down those hate videos. Tiffany, stop, Brad said. His voice was dead flat. What? Brad, you have to help me. That's your job. I can't help you, Tiff. I'm calling to tell you we're dropping you. The room spun. What? You can't drop me. I'm your biggest earner in the lifestyle vertical. Not anymore, Brad said. Do you know who sits on the board of Influence Global? Do you know who owns the venture capital firm that funds our agency? Tiffany felt a cold knot of dread in her stomach. No. Silas Sterling, Brad whispered. His holding company, Eros, has a 40% stake in our parent company. We just got a call from his legal team. They didn't even ask us to drop you. They just asked if we supported the harassment of minority business owners. Tiff, they threatened to pull our funding. He owns the agency? Tiffany whispered. He owns everything, Tiffany. He's in logistics, he moves money, he moves product, and right now, he's moving you out. We're terminating your contract for breach of the morality clause. Effective immediately. The line went dead. Before she could process that, her email pinged. Subject. Notice of termination. Luna Skincare, Dear Miss Street Claire, in light of recent events. Ping. Subject. Partnership paused. Fit Tia. We are suspending all affiliate codes. Ping. Subject. Eviction notice. Dear tenant, per the terms of your lease agreement regarding illegal conduct and public nuisance. Tiffany stared at the eviction email. Her landlord was a sweet old man named Mr. Henderson. There was no way he saw the video. She scrolled down to the bottom of the email. It wasn't from Mr. Henderson. It was from a property management firm, Sterling Real Estate Holdings, LLC. She dropped the phone. It bounced on the rug she had bought with the money from the Luna Skincare deal that no longer existed. Silas Sterling hadn't just kicked her out of a lounge. He had systematically dismantled her entire life in under 2 hours, all while presumably finishing his book. She ran to the window, looking out at the Los Angeles skyline. It usually made her feel powerful. Now, the city looked like a fortress, and she was on the outside. She grabbed her laptop. She had to fix this. She would go live again. She would cry harder. She would play the ultimate victim card. She would say he hacked her phone. She would say he stalked her. She opened Instagram. Account disabled. Your account has been suspended for violating our community guidelines regarding harassment and bullying. She tried TikTok. Banned. She tried Twitter. Suspended. Silas Sterling didn't just have money. He had infrastructure. He had connections with the safety trust teams at major tech platforms. He had simply flagged her account as a security risk. Tiffany Street Claire, the girl who lived for attention, had been digitally erased. 3 months later, the fluorescent lights of the boutique counter at the Great Lakes Mall in Mentor, Ohio, buzzed with a headache-inducing hum. It was a far cry from the golden hour sunlight of Los Angeles. There were no ring lights here, no tripods, just the smell of cheap perfume and the relentless shuffle of shoppers looking for discount concealers. Tiffany Street. Claire, formerly Tiff Travels, formerly a brand ambassador for Luna Skin, formerly a person who mattered, was currently on her knees, scrubbing a foundation stain off the linoleum floor. Tiffany, her manager, a 19-year-old girl named Kayla with a messy bun, shouted from the register, "You missed a spot near the clearance bin. And smile, please. Customers are watching." Tiffany flinched. She didn't look up. "Coming, Kayla." Her phone vibrated in her apron pocket. For a split second, a phantom limb of hope twitched in her chest. Maybe it was a sponsor. Maybe it was an apology. Maybe it was a way out. She wiped her hands on her black uniform pants, polyester, itchy, unflattering, and checked the screen. It wasn't a sponsor. It was a notification from her lawyer, a court-appointed public defender, because she could no longer afford her agency's legal team. Subject: Settlement update. Sterling Holdings, Miss Street. Claire, the plaintiff has agreed to drop the defamation suit on the condition of a permanent non-disclosure agreement regarding the incident at LAX. They are not asking for damages, but they have permanently barred you from all Eros-managed properties globally. Also, Mr. Sterling's team sent over a gesture of goodwill. Tiffany frowned. A gesture? She opened the attachment. It was a digital voucher. $15. Gift card, Hudson News and Books. Read more, speak less. The irony hit her like a physical slap. He hadn't just ruined her. He was mocking her from a private jet while she was scraping gum off a mall floor. She looked at the voucher, then at her reflection in the glass counter. The blonde hair was fading, the roots showing, the glow was gone. She wasn't a victim of cancel culture. She was a casualty of a war she hadn't even realized she was fighting. She shoved the phone back into her pocket, blinked back hot tears, and went back to scrubbing. 500 miles east, the atmosphere was very different. The Centurion Sapphire Lounge at JFK International Airport was a cathedral of quiet efficiency. Outside, a winter storm was battering New York, coating the runway in a sheet of gray slush. Inside, the air was warm, smelling of roasted chestnuts and aged mahogany. Silas Sterling sat in seat 2B. He wasn't wearing the charcoal hoodie today. He was dressed in a soft, navy merino wool sweater and dark denim. On the small table next to him sat a glass of sparkling water with a single slice of lime and a hardcover copy of The Prince by Machiavelli. He wasn't reading, though. He was watching the snow swirl against the soundproof glass. His phone, resting face down on the table, buzzed once. An encrypted message from Arthur Pendleton. "Arthur, the Brussels deal is closed. The rail lines are ours. Also, the team confirmed. Miss Street Claire accepted the settlement. She's working retail in Ohio. Do you want us to monitor her further?" Silas picked up the phone. He typed a single word. "No." He set the phone down. It was done. He didn't feel joy. He didn't feel triumph. He felt balance. The universe had been tilted by arrogance, and he had simply set it straight. "Excuse me?" Silas tensed slightly. The muscle memory of the LAX incident was still there, a faint echo. He turned his head slowly. Standing there was a young man in a rumpled suit, holding a tray with a half-eaten panini and a beer. He looked like he had been through a war zone. His tie was loose, his eyes were red-rimmed, and he looked desperate for a seat. "Is this seat taken?" the man asked, gesturing to the empty leather armchair next to Silas. "Everywhere else is full. The storm has everything backed up." Silas looked at the young man. He saw the exhaustion. He saw the lack of pretense. There was no camera, no entitlement, just a tired human being. "No," Silas said, his voice soft and welcoming. "Please, sit. Thanks, man. You're a lifesaver." The man collapsed into the chair, letting out a long groan as he loosened his tie further. "I've been stuck here for 6 hours. My connection to London is probably cancelled." "It's not cancelled," Silas said, taking a sip of his water. "They're de-icing the wings on the 777 now. Boarding will start in 40 minutes. The man blinked, surprised. "Oh? How do you know?" "I pay attention to the logistics," Silas said vaguely. The man chuckled, taking a swig of his beer. "Well, I hope you're right. I need to get out of here. I hate airports. Too much drama." Silas raised an eyebrow. "Drama?" "Yeah, you know. Everyone's on edge." The man leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. Did you hear about that influencer chick? The one who got destroyed a few months ago? Silas kept his face perfectly neutral. I don't follow social media much. Oh, it was legendary, the man said, shaking his head with a mix of awe and fear. She tried to kick some guy out of a lounge in LA. Turns out, the guy was, like, a secret billionaire or something. Owned the whole place. They say he didn't even say a word. Just snapped his fingers, and she was banned from flying. For life. Silas turned a page of his book. Is that what they say? Yeah. Rumor is, he's some kind of tech ghost. Or maybe a foreign prince. Nobody knows his name. He just exists. The man shuddered slightly. Makes you think, right? You never know who you're sitting next to. That quiet guy in the hoodie could hold the keys to the kingdom. The man took another bite of his sandwich, oblivious. Silas looked at him. He looked at the snow falling outside. He thought about the power of anonymity. In a world where everyone was screaming to be seen, to be verified, to be followed, the ultimate luxury was to be invisible. You're right, Silas said quietly. You never know. Exactly, the man said. Anyway, I'm Greg. I sell solar panels. Nice to meet you, Greg, Silas said. He didn't offer his name. The intercom chimed a soft, melodic tone that cut through the low murmur of the lounge. Attention passengers on Flight 001 to London Heathrow. Priority boarding is now beginning for Group 1 and private suite guests. Silas stood up. He closed his book and slid it into his leather satchel. He picked up his coat. That's me, Silas said. Lucky you, Greg said, saluting him with the beer glass. Safe travels. Hope the billionaire isn't on your flight, eh? Silas smiled. It was a genuine smile this time, one that reached his eyes. I think I'll be fine, Silas said. He walked toward the exit. The lounge staff, who had been trained rigorously over the last 3 months, did not wave. They did not shout. They simply nodded, a synchronized, respectful acknowledgement of the man who signed their checks. As he reached the desk, the gate agent, a woman named Sarah who had worked there for 20 years, looked up. She saw the name on the screen before he even scanned his pass. Status. Owner. Chairman. VVIP. Good evening, Mr. Sterling. She whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the terminal. The car is waiting on the tarmac to take you to the stairs. We have the champagne chilled. Water is fine, Sarah, Silas said. Just water. Of course, sir. Silas walked through the automatic doors and onto the jet bridge. The cold New York air hit him, sharp and cleansing. He walked alone, his footsteps silent on the metal ramp. He wasn't Silas the billionaire. He wasn't Silas the Avenger. He was just a man who wanted to read his book in peace. And as the heavy steel door of the Gulfstream G700 closed behind him, sealing out the noise, the chaos, and the Tiffany's of the world, Silas finally found what he had been looking for all along. Silence. And that, my friends, is the story of how Tiffany Street Claire learned the most expensive lesson of her life. True power doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need a ring light, it doesn't need a hashtag, and it certainly doesn't need to ask for a manager. Silas Sterling destroyed her life without raising his voice, proving that in a world of noise, silence is the deadliest weapon of all. Tiffany lost her career, her home, and her dignity because she judged a book and a billionaire by its cover. If you enjoyed this story of high-altitude justice and brutal karma, please destroy that like button, just don't get banned for it. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. And let me know in the comments. What would you do if you found out the quiet person you were yelling at owned the building? I'll see you in the next one. Stay humble, stay safe, and be careful who you mess with.